for whatever reason, I seem to read quite a few of these young adult fantasy books. I guess I just always like them. It's kind of a guilty pleasure. I like Twilight. I've said that before. I need to do a reactionary review of Twilight at some point. It's a bit like the Batman movies, where I kind of want to do it when I really have a good idea of what I'm going to say, because it's not like this that's of lesser importance to me. But I just like that genre. I guess it's because they tend to lack some of the kind of brutal excessiveness of some other types of novels. Like we don't normally get like extremely explicit sex. They keep the polyandry down a bit. There's not really orgies or stuff like that, but there's still romance. Some books I accidentally bought a couple books that I thought were kind of like this, and they were just constant sex scenes, and it's just really boring and just degenerate. So young adult books tend to have much less of that. So I do like the romance part of it. I do like romance stories, particularly when it's mixed with something like fantasy or period drama, period piece, or science fiction or something. So those are all good aspects. I don't know. It's just a genre I like. There's things like found footage. I just like to watch everything I can in it, just because I find it interesting to see all the different perspectives people take of it. So, Throne of Glass. As you can see from the picture, they state fans of Game of Thrones and Hunger Games will love it. And that's pretty much what it is. It's Game of Thrones meets Hunger Games. Does that sound like a strange combination? Well, it kind of is. But it seems to work. So let's just go into a bit of the plot. So our story opens in a labor camp where we have Selena Sardathian, I think is how you pronounce her name, which is a suitably pretentious name. So she's in a labor camp after being arrested during an assassination attempt gone wrong. Selena Sardathian is your typical young adult protagonist. She is a goddess. She has the beauty of a goddess. She's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed waifu. But there's kind of an element of realism to this, because after she caught in the escape gone wrong and was sent to the labor camp, she actually becomes emaciated. And this is where I find Throne of Glass really sticks out from some of its competitors. The author seems to know what they're doing more. There's a little more realism. There's a little more thought put into it. They're willing to give the characters more flaws than I find some similar stuff is. So Selena Sardathian is in a labor camp, so she's emaciated, etc. And she's on the verge of death after being there for 1 year. Apparently, previously she had attempted to escape and killed like 30 guards. So her background is her parents died in a mysterious accident. So she has this mysterious, angsty past. And I'm not going to spoil the plot twist that happens in the later books, but it's so obvious. Just as to who she really is. And if I ever get around to publishing Summoner, I basically make fun of this. It's just, let's just say her parents are someone important. But yeah, she's in this labor camp, so she's brought before, and she attempted to escape. Her parents died, and she was raised by the king of assassins and basically turned into a super soldier. So she killed just dozens of people before being captured and sent to a labor camp. The king of Otterland, which is the empire that controls most of the known world, did not have her killed because she's too useful to be killed. She's an expertly trained fighter. To just kill her off would kind of be a waste of potential. So the king of Otterland's son, Prince Dorian, shows up, and he asks her to be his champion in an upcoming contest. You see, the king is aware of some sort of rebellion plot that's going to break out and attempt to dislodge him, and he needs a champion. He needs a personal assassin slash secret agent to kind of do his dirty work for him. So various nobles are recruiting people from across the kingdom to face off against each other in a competition. So Prince Dorian wants Selena Sardathian to be his champion because he thinks that she's the best of the best, which she is. Although she's incredibly weak and emaciated from being in a labor camp. So he basically offers her that if she agrees to be the champion, he'll free her after 4 years. She'll get an amnesty for all her crimes, and she'll be given more gold than she could ever spend in a lifetime. Now, Selena Sardathian is only 18 years old, so to be free by the time she's 22 sounds pretty good. She has no... And this is kind of an interesting aspect of her character. She's kind of morally ambiguous and amoral. She doesn't really object to the idea that she'll be doing the King of Otterland's dirty work and basically slaughtering people who get in his way. And given the fact that he's a megalomaniacal sociopath, that's pretty much everybody. So she agrees to be a... she agrees to be Dorian's champion. Now, Dorian's probably my favorite character. Dorian's described as a good-looking guy. He's very cunning, very astute. He's described as a ladies' man. He's described as being kind of sheltered. In contrast to his father, though, who we'll talk about a bit later, who's a complete psychopath, he's a lot more compassionate, a lot more kind, a lot more kind of pragmatic. He kind of reminds me of, what's his name again? Valerian Minsk from Brood War. No, not Brood War. Heart of the Swarm from like the StarCraft games. So he's kind of like the smarter, nicer version of his father. And he kind of starts winning over Selena Sardathian because she likes him because he's really nice. Like when they get back to the castle, she really likes books, so he gets her like stacks of books. He buys her nice dresses. He makes sure she has all the clothes that she'd want. He also introduces her to Cole. Cole's the captain of the King's Guard. He kind of has a bromance going on with Dorian, and Cole is Selena's eventual love interest. Spoiler alert. So Cole is described as a really good-looking, big, strong guy who has very little sense of humor, is extremely stern, but very, very moral and very, very ethical. He has a tendency to maybe see the world in black and white, but he has a good heart and he has a good sense of justice. So Prince Dorian assigns him to train Selena for the upcoming competition. So the upcoming competition is kind of like the Hunger Games. They're going to have a series of challenges which have a high rate of fatality, and every time there's a challenge and someone fails, they will get kicked out of the competition. And at the end, however many are left, I think it's 4, they will go and fight each other in a duel to the death. So, I mean, it's pretty twisted. Selena's pretty much okay with this, though. And this is kind of where the amoral part of her character comes in. She doesn't really mind killing people. She's just like, oh, okay, if this is going to be my freedom. And that's what I kind of like about it, because rather than kind of this noble, self-sacrificing person who is just like, no, I'll never kill anybody, I'll never work for the evil king. She's like, no, I was stuck in that fucking labor camp for a year. They whipped me, they beat the shit out of me, they starved me. If I have to, like, kill some people to get out of this labor camp, then I'll do it. And that's kind of the way she rolls, and she kind of likes being in the castle. Eventually, she kind of hates it, but eventually she's kind of like, I like the money, I like the pretty gowns, I like the nice things, I like the candy, etc. So most of the book covers the various challenges. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but this she is very much kind of the underdog. While she's much better trained than the rest of the competitors in the competition, who are mass murderers. Some are just soldiers from Otterland's regular army, etc. Despite the fact that she's better trained than all of them, she's extremely weak. So her and Cole basically spend a lot of the book just in training montages, trying to get her ready. Cole is an excellent fighter, as is Dorian. We see Dorian throughout the book largely arguing with his father. He always advocates mercy, advocates cutting deals with local leadership, that sort of thing. He's somewhat self-absorbed and he's a ladies' man. We do see evidence, though, that he does have kind of a good heart beneath it all. He seems to imply when he's talking to Selena that he would settle down and stop his affairs if he found a woman who actually loved him. And he's in love with Selena for most of the book. And he tries to flirt with her and he tries to come on to her. But Selena cannot really see past his father, and she sees their relationship as being impossible. Which is, I don't know, I kind of like Dorian better than Cole. I thought it would be interesting to have her as queen, like an assassin queen. I'd kind of like to see her kind of like play the Game of Thrones, you know? Because she kind of has an interesting personality for it. But it's not to be. So she kind of just keeps turning him down, and he keeps lusting after her, and they kind of play cat and mouse. There's also a cat and mouse game with her and Cole, because Cole and her truly love each other, but they're both extremely stubborn and arrogant and are not willing to admit it. At least until book 2. There's a very strong relationship between them. We're also introduced to Euphemia, I think is how you pronounce her name. So basically what happened is they're on a massive continent. Otterland was one kingdom among many, and a rather disturbing man, I don't think they ever say what his name is, but the king of Otterland inherited the throne, the current king, Dorian's father, and he embarked upon a 20-year-long conquest in which he succeeded in destroying pretty much all the other kingdoms in the world, including the half-fae, the fae and the half-fae who could use magic. Now, Selena used to be able to use magic, but during the early conquests, I think around the time she was 8 or so, the king made a decree that magic was an affront to the gods and was powered by demons, and began killing anyone who could use magic, and began burning all the texts that explained how magic could work. And around that time, for whatever reason, magic left the world, and Selena can no longer use her magic, nor can anyone else. So the king of Otterland is a imperialist and extremely brutal. He enslaves the populations of the countries he conquers. All prisoners of war are sent to forced labor camps. In book 2, it's revealed they have so many slaves they don't really know what to do with them, and so they deliberately start making the conditions at the camps worse and worse to try and kill off more of the excess conquered population. The phase that they don't succeed in killing are flee across the ocean, and at the time of the book, virtually all of the continent is now under control. Euphemia is the princess from one of the kingdoms that was conquered but is still somewhat autonomous, so she bears the title of princess. Her family have strong ties to the Fae, and as is later revealed, she has a form of magic that hasn't fled yet and can understand magic. So kind of throughout the book we go through Selena, it's inspired by Cinderella from my understanding. She breaks out of her shell, she gains her great beauty, she becomes the object of desire, there's a love triangle, there's all the competitions that she wins a lot of them. She's up against all men, of course. And as it goes, a number of the champions begin to die, other than herself, of course. And they die, and there's this really creepy guy who's the favorite to win named Cain. And he seems to be growing stronger as they all die. And she keeps finding spells everywhere, like symbols drawn on different kinds of things. And it's kind of like this mystery plot. I didn't find the mystery plot that interesting. I was more interested in the interaction between the characters and maybe wanted a bit more about Otterland. But she suspects Euphemia is behind it. But eventually, it turns out that Cain had been taught how to use demonic magic, and was using a demon that he summoned to go and kill the other champions and absorb their strength, which is admittedly kind of lame. There's like this thing where behind Selena's a painting in her room. There's a tunnel that leads to a crypt, and there's a ghost of the first queen of Otterland who gives her a medallion that protects her from evil magic or something. So she almost gets killed by the demon, but Euphemia defeats her, helps her. So then we have the final battle to decide who's going to be the king's champion. And there's 4 people left. She beats her first opponent really quickly, and then it comes for her to fight Cain. Now there's a woman named Kaitane who's been in love with Dorian the whole book, and she spikes Selena's wine, and Selena basically gets her ass kicked for the entire fight because they put a massive quantity of a knockout drug in it. But there's this really like extensive surreal scene where like she looks at Cain and she has like an acid trip and sees like all these like demons and the dead and like stuff from the space in between worlds. Just all that random bizarre stuff. So all that happens, and then Euphemia uses her magic to remove the poison in her veins, and then she beats the crap out of Cain, and Cain's about to kill her even though he won, and Cole runs him through, and Cole spends the next book angsting about how he killed Cain, who was a mass murderer who probably ate people. So the book ends with Selena being declared the champion of the King of Otterland, the King of Otterland being pissed off that he couldn't get her killed and that she won the competition fair and square, Dorian being angsty that Selena will never love him, and Cole and her dancing around one another. So what can be said about Throne of Glass? I like it actually. I like it a lot. The characters feel realistic. Selena has a lot of kind of negative characteristics. She is kind of a feminist hero, but she's more flawed than most of them, if that makes sense. The other characters find her arrogance, self-absorption, and recklessness annoying. Because in a lot of these, like Bella, Swan, everyone will just be okay with the completely irresponsible way the main character acts. But in this case, people get annoyed by her, and her smart mouth gets her in trouble, and she frequently kind of fucks up and almost dies as a result of it. So, I mean, that's good. People frequently, like, tell her off and that kind of thing. And she's portrayed as having people find her to have kind of an abrasive personality. So that's an improvement over a lot of young adult fiction. Cole is likable. He's kind of a bit boring. But he's a likable, nice guy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having just kind of the classic honorable guy. I really like Dorian. Dorian is kind of a very complicated character who really needed more screen time. Euphemia is just kind of a generic elf chick, which I'm fine with. More hot women is good. I like to read about hot women. But I don't know. She's just kind of boring. And I couldn't stop thinking about the Euphemia from Code Geass, which kind of reminds me of her a bit. One thing I really have to give them credit for is the King of Otterland is really creepy. They really just portray him as being this lunatic psychopath who's really smart and really cunning and really conniving. I think this book really does a good job of portraying the brutality of war and what tyranny's actually like. Granted, they kind of just make Otterland out to be evil, but they make them evil in like a believable way, and kind of what like a real world evil kingdom would be, and not kind of like a cartoonish evil. And yeah, I overall think Throne of Glass is a really good book. I think it's a massive improvement over the rest of the genre. While parts of it can be annoying or drag a bit, overall I think it's a good series, and I definitely recommend it. So that was more of just kind of a review than a reactionary review per se. But yeah, this is Argent Templar signing out.